Here's a guy that can frequently fix his features. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Masterverse, new Eternia Many Faces. When Castle Grayskull shattered New Eternia, the mind of an adventurer shattered with it. Now known as Many Faces, the curse forces him into the faces of many beings, from human to monster to robot, each with its own memory and agenda. Little does he know the combined memories of his many faces are the map to restoring Eternia to glory. Now, before we go and start identifying all his many identities, let's first grab the tape measure and see how tall Many Faces stands. The figure in this case is 7 inches in height, or in centimeters, you're looking at the figure being 18 centimeters tall. Some figure comparisons we can do. Seeing as Shadow Weaver is part of this wave, I did want to bring her in, although I would not likely have her displayed along with Many Faces on my shelf. She'll be, of course, relegated with the rest of the horde. Here's a couple of other Masters figures we can, though, bring in for comparisons. Here's what the figure looks like with Roboto. Here's what the figure, though, looks like with Zodak. And here's what the figure also looks like with Stratos. I really like the things that come included with this figure. More of the boring things first. The figure comes included with closed fists. Considering that he can carry both his included accessories, I can't see myself ever really having the figure displayed with closed fists, but they're there in case you wanted them to. No, much more interesting is the fact that the figure comes included with his blaster. It still, for me, looks like one of those outdated... Back in the day, if you ever went to the dentist, I certainly hope that you did, when you were a kid, they used to have this thing that sort of was like an X-ray, or it was a laser. Of course, this would be the part that would protect the person that was working on your teeth, but it sort of was a guard here in the front. It would make a beep, beep noise when, of course, they were applying it to your teeth. I think it was actually more like a laser. Kind of looks something like that, although it's molded there, a more elaborate version of the laser. It's molded here nicely in a very bright, vibrant orange. It can be held in either one of his hands without even having to change the fists out. Of course, those will just be, again, relegated with the rest of the bags of figures, accessories I already have displayed or have packed away for right now. Having the figure, though, if you wanted to have the blaster in his hand, is quite easy. And again, because he does have gripping hands, if you decide you want to have, for example, the gun over here, you can choose that for yourself. Or if you wanted to have the figure displayed with the next accessory, you can also have him carrying this around as well. The figure comes included with a box of faces. No, I'm not seriously making that up. First of all, the front of the box actually does have a really neat eyeball. Looks like right away it would be belonging, say, to Triclops. But it does actually have a hinge. The one thing I really don't like about it, though, is the only few times that I've actually closed the lid on this, it has left behind a very unsightly stress mark. And that's not something that's unfortunately going to be able to change. It does have a handle, so then again, if you wanted to have this figure displayed with carrying around his case, you can have the figure displayed that way. But there are also pegs on the inside of it. And simply, if you flip the figure around, if I can get him and actually let it go for a second, if you flip the figure around to the back, he does actually have conveniently placed holes on the back of his torso. I'm just going to remove the gun for right now. You can take the case, if providing, of course, using the pegs there, and simply just fit them into the holes that are on the back of the figure's body. And Many Faces can carry around his trunk that way. All this time talking about it, I'm sure you guys are curious to see what's inside the case. What's inside the case? Let's go ahead and just put the figure down here for 1 second. Yeah, I really like the coloring of it. I just don't like the idea that this line is now here. The first time you get this actually inside the packaging, let's just flip the lid up here for a second. When you get it in the packaging, it looks like this. And obviously, it doesn't really tell you on the instructions to actually close this, but considering that there's a latch right here, and obviously there's a matching part that goes right here, anyone will try to do this. And the moment, again, you first do this, you'll say, oh, I can't believe it left behind a line like this. There's no way to avoid it, just by the coloring of the plastic that they use. At least the stress mark isn't on the inside of it. So again, like, you can have this really, for all intents and purposes, displayed along with the figure without even having to close the case. But I like the idea, at least they included a handle, and they put pegs provided on the back of it that you could attach it onto the figure's body if you wanted to. Inside, though, is a collection of faces. Many faces, of course. He does have a skull down below. He has a blue Vincent Price. I think that's supposed to be Keldor. And he has what looks to be almost more of a cartoon version of Many Faces up at the top there. All of these are actually removable. All of these can be swapped out with the existing faces that he has on his body. Say what? Say what? You can swap out those faces. I'm going to do that more in a moment. First, though, let's pick up the figure and look at the defaulted faces. Now, the thing about the faces, though, like the original vintage toy, he has a little dial here at the top. Now, this, for all intents and purposes, would allow you to rotate this and gain access to the rest of his faces. The only thing about it, though, is it's really tight to turn. I found, in fact, it was a lot easier. And you actually have to remove this dome anyways if you wanted to swap out the faces. But I find it helps, first of all, just to detach this anyways. Just remove it from both the sides. There's actually a clip on here. There's a clip right here. And just once you remove this, I find it's actually a lot easier to turn the faces that way. Then when you're happy with the face that you have, if you want to have, for example, scary, like lizard face, you can do that. And then once that's the face that you want to choose, snap that back then into place. Because I just find it's very difficult to turn it. I don't know if it's just the fact it's maybe getting hung up on plastic inside, but I find it's just so much more easier to remove this, although sometimes it's hard to kind of just detach this. But I find it so much easier to actually rotate these. Now, of course, you do have, like the original toy, you have this face to work with, and you don't even have to really turn the dial either. With this, with the lid actually completely off, it's so much easier just to rotate it down below here. So you have like first of all, you have the regular defaulted face. Then you have lizard face. And then you have one that looks like he's a Decepticon. Maybe one of the Insecticons or one of the Constructicons. It looks, for me, like a Decepticon. And then again, you just put the dome back in place when you're happy with the one that you have. If, though, you did want to change out the faces, I love the idea that they actually did do this. Just once again, detach this. Find the face that you want to work with. So let's say, for example, I want to get away from using it so it looks like the toy, and maybe I want to make it look more like the cartoon. Well, you can take this one that looks a little like Ozzy Osbourne or Zartan. Simply just detach these. They're a little hard the first time you do this. I found it was easy, in fact, to actually take myself like a little screwdriver. And I don't know if it's intentional, but I like that underneath each one of the holes actually look like the eye sockets to a skull. Found that was kind of cool. Anyways, you're just going to detach the one that you want to work with, then find the face that you want to change, and then get your finger in there and just detach it. And it works the exact same way, leaving behind a skull underneath it. I don't think it's supposed to be a skull, but then take the face that you want to use, take then the holes that are, or the pegs that are on the bottom of it, and just plug it in place. Couldn't be any bit easier than that. And for me, like, that's going to be the way I'm going to be displaying many faces. I like this face a lot more. The colors I find also work a lot better with the colors that are already provided on the plastic anyways. So like the pink I find matches the pink, although maybe it's just a little bit darker there. And again, like, you can easily, of course, now you've got yourself an extra face. What we're going to do with the extra face, simply just take the face and plug it back into the provided case, and you can store the figure's faces, at least the ones that you're not planning to use, in the case instead. Simply just close that up. But getting a closer look at the rest of the figure, again, like, all the plastic carries over to the original vintage figure. I really should have also brought in the Origins many faces, which again literally would have looked like this, just a little bit smaller. The color use that they've used here, kind of more the grayish blues, work quite well. You've got some nice metallic purples that are also added there as well. You've got some really nice use of golds. Of course, the pink, it's all, again, like really retro looking colors that they've used for the figure's body. Again, he still retains all the same articulations, which more normally would be the case with the Masterverse figures. We'll talk more about that more in a moment. Of course, on the back, we've already looked at the fact there's the holes there that can take the provided case and snap it onto the back of the figure's body. I think for the purpose, though, of displaying the figure, I don't know if I will be displaying him with the case. I just find like the case does add some additional space on the back of it. Like, I think it makes it look a little too bulky, especially when you're looking at it from the front. It's so funny that, in fact, I talk about Zartan. Zartan, the original toy, even, in fact, carried around a tiny little case with a mustache guy's face inside. So it's kind of funny, in fact, that I made the reference of saying it looks like Zartan, when, in fact, he carries around the faces the exact same way as another master of disguise. Anyways, for right now, let's just put that to the side. Yeah, overall, like, it's a really nice looking figure. There is paint, of course, where it's provided. Some really nice use of purples, some really nice use of blues. And again, like, it looks just like a regular mini face, just a lot bigger. But for me, the favorite thing about this is the fact that you can change the faces out. And this is the face. I don't know if I will change the other two, because the other two are also classic faces too. I really like this one, and this is the one I think for right now I'm going to settle with. For the figure's articulation, I don't know if you would consider necessarily this part that's articulated, but I guess that could be something that rotates. Because of that, obviously he forfeits the idea of a regular ball joint on his face. You can't really move his head up and down. You can't rock it back and forth. You can't do that. But you can, at least, as regular Masterverse figures, you can hinge the arms at 90 degrees, take those arms and rotate them all the way around, and that's the case on both the sides. Figure has a bicep swivel. A little noisy on my figure, but he does have the swivel nonetheless. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbows, and the hands do rotate all the way around. Does have a waist swivel also. He doesn't have, well, he has a waist swivel, but just before doing that, he actually does have an upper torso ball joint. I was really actually quite surprised to see how much it moves. I mean, look how far back you can angle the figure's body and how far forward you can do the same. Really nice articulation point right here. And they have smartly hidden it underneath, of course, the hoses that project out from the front appliance that he has on the front of his body. We've already looked again, the fact the figure does have a waist swivel, so he has that. The figure does split out ball joints on the tops of his legs. Legs go forward, they go back. 3/4 of the way up the thigh, there's a swivel cut. The only other thing I would say, though, about the figure is clearly there's a case right here where they've actually painted the plastic to try to match the skin tone that he has. And obviously, there's a departure there where you can clearly see, like, this part's painted, this part's molded plastic. I wish that it was a little bit closer in color scheme. I guess they probably could have also painted this and left behind this as being the plastic, but again, obviously for the amount of paint that would have been used, it makes more smarter sense from a financial standpoint to actually have only painted a smaller amount of it and leaving rest behind in the, again, like this metallic blue that he has, and the metallic blue looks fantastic on this figure. Does have a double hinge on the knee, so that's good to see, even though he has this really large front knee pad. And again, regular figures, he does have the ankle pivot that moves back and forth this way, and Many Faces also moves his ankle this way as well. We have looked at several of the Masterverse figures. For me, at least, I generally like to collect the more smaller Master Universe Origins figures, but I gotta say, like, Mattel's doing such a great job when it comes to these Masterverse figures. Whether you are necessarily collecting all of them, I think obviously in a case like this too, like, it's filling in the gaps. I don't know if necessarily we are going to be getting ourselves like a Roboto as part of the regular Revelation line. Or actually, this is the Revelation Roboto. I don't know if we're going to be getting like a new Eternia version of Roboto. So it might be the case where you might have to kind of pick figures from the various waves that make up the general Masterverse. So of course we have like Zodak here. We have ourselves Many Faces. And now we have Roboto here from the Revelation line. They're nice looking figures though. Of the figures we have looked at, of the at least the taller scale, Many Faces by far is my favorite. I'm not just saying that because I also had a Many Faces when I was growing up, and it was one of my favorite Motu figures. But I just love the fact that they included as many things as they did. Of course, they're throwbacks to original toy lines by including the blaster they had before, but also by throwing in new things too. Like the case, for example. I still don't like the stress seam that is made on the side of it, but the idea that he has not only the 3 faces with the figure in the first place, but another 3 faces you can choose from and display with the figure instead if you'd like. Maybe not mentioned in this review, but you can actually take as well Many Faces blaster and plug it into those provided holes on the back of the figure's torso where his face case was instead. Face case. I love the idea that the case actually does have a handle on the top of it, so Many Faces in fact can actually go door to door. Could you imagine if Many Faces was a face door-to-door salesman selling faces to maybe people that weren't happy with the one that they already have? And it's not just for show either. Any one of those faces can detach inside the case and swap out with the existing faces that he has on that turnstile that he has on the top of his head. Now, the only thing about it, though, is unfortunately, I find that the dial doesn't work at all when it comes to rotating the faces. It's just so much easier, for me at least, to take the dome off first, rotate it to the face that I want to have it at, and then put the dome back in place. Now, also going back to the idea of swapping out, the swappability of the faces is by far my favorite thing about Many Faces. And I chose myself, at least, to remove the retro face in favor of one that looks, I think, a little bit more like the cartoon. But there's a couple of other options also available there as well that at any given point, you can easily just pop out the faces, and there's a place at least to store the faces back in the case, and you can have that Many Faces carrying around. I think for me, when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf, I'm going to actually display him with the case open, as if he's sort of proud and showcasing his collection of faces. Hopefully they all belong to him. What do you guys think, though, of the Revelation? Actually, it's not Revelation. It's the new Eternia Many Faces. And if you have had the chance to pick this figure up for yourself, which face did you choose to use to display with the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly do want to stick around for more Motu reviews, if, though, you haven't already done so, it makes no sense if you already have, but if, let's just say you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.